it's been it really has been a wonderful day to be with you folks. It seems like it's been a long time, but I always enjoy getting on the road. My wife told me the other day, she said, Jim, you've just been home too long. Don't you? If we disagree on something, her first comment to me, she looks at me and gives me that twinkle and says, don't you think it's time to get back on the road? But no, I have really missed it. I guess shutting down everything gives you a new appreciation, for the freedoms we do have in our Lord and Savior. And so it's exciting to get back on the road. And what a better way to do it than your car break down and you have to deal with all that. I mean, that's just wonderful. I was thinking over, Denise and I have been with International Gospel Missions. This is our 31st year. And I was thinking over the 31 years that how many times I've broken down. And I can use one hand and count in 31 years. This one was probably the most, I've never had someone travel 6 hours to help me out. Usually you pull over, you get it fixed, and you go on. But anyway, so God has been good, and can't complain about it. And we're just excited to be serving Him. Denise and I have been with IGM 31 years. For those of you who don't know my background, I come from a long line of missionaries. I'm a third generation. That means my grandparents were missionaries. My parents served over 44 years in Ivory Coast. And my dad has 4 sisters, and all 4 of his sisters and their families are missionaries. And then I have 2 brothers and a sister, and all 3 of them and their families are missionaries. And so I thank the Lord for the missionary heritage that He has blessed us with. And that is a blessing. God has been good. I've spent the majority of my life in Africa. I was born there. I was raised there. And so, in a lot of ways, Africa is home to me. And what we're dealing with in this country today is what we deal with our whole lives in Africa. So it just, it's like, this is nothing compared to what you have to deal with and put up with in some of those countries. So I thank the Lord for that. I thank Him for those years that He's given us to serve Him. And Denise and I, our ministry started out as missionaries serving in West Africa. And after 8 years there, that last term, our terms were 4 years. We'd go over for 4 years. That last term, we went through three coups in 4 years. A coup is any attempt to overthrow the government. And you never know when a coup is going to happen. You just hope you don't ever get caught in the middle of a coup. So that's the biggest thing. We did. We got caught in the middle of one. And, that was quite a situation. My wife was coming back to the States with our oldest daughter to put her in Bible school. And I had the 3 little ones. Well, they were littler. I think Janelle was about 5 or 6 at that time. And I can remember, even to this day, I can still remember everything that happened on that trip. I had those 3 girls, and they were all crying because their big sister was leaving and be gone for 2 years. They wouldn't get to see her for 2 years till we came back to the States. And we went back to the guest house that night, and they're sobbing, and I finally said at 5 in the morning, I said, you know what? They weren't sleeping. None of us were sleeping. I said, let's just get up and leave. And I said, we'll just get up and leave. We had a 4-hour trip back to Bouaké, our city. We traveled 2.5 hours. We got to what was the president's hometown. The president before the one we had at that time, he was president of Ivory Coast from 1960 through 1990, 92. So he had been president for many years. They all loved him, well respected. And when we were coming into his town, I knew we had a problem because they had military out, they had police out, they had what we would call, they call them gendarmes, we call them country police or state police. And they pulled us over and said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm going to Waukee." They said, "Well, you can't, there's a problem going on." And I said, "Yeah, I can see that." They said, "Just go straight through town, don't stop, and keep going." And I said, "Well, I need fuel. I have to have fuel." And they said, "Well, stop, get your fuel, and keep going." So as I was going into the town, it was a ghost town. There wasn't any. I mean, that town is usually, people on the road, you can't hardly get through the town because people just all over the roads, walking everywhere, markets going, the whole works. There wasn't anything. And we pulled into the gas station to get fuel. I pulled the vehicle in and shut the car off. And next thing I knew, I was surrounded by 6 men with machine guns. And the one came over to my side. And so I rolled down the window. He said, "Get out. Give me the keys to your car. We're taking your vehicle." Well, these weren't the friendly guys. And anyway, Ivory Coast prides themselves on being a dialoguing country. And so I thought, well, maybe we can dialogue this thing through and see where that gets you. Well, he wasn't having anything of it. He finally put the gun to my head. He said, "Listen, you can give me the keys or I'm just taking it." So I said, "Girls, get out. We're going to go." And Janelle was about 5 at that time, and she piped up and she says, Dad, do not give him those keys. I am not walking." And I turned around and looked at her and I said, "Janelle, shut up. This is my life." And she says, "Oh, I'm telling Mom, you said that S word." I really needed that grief, And the guy heard me talking to her, the one with the machine gun, and he looked at me and he said, "What did she say?" I said, "You don't know. You don't want to know what she said." He said, "Yeah." I said, "She said, don't give you the keys because she's not walking." And then he started smiling. So then I knew we were, okay, this situation was starting to diffuse itself a little bit. So then I said to him, I said, "Can I get my girls?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Never mind." I said, "I'll take these 2. You can have the little one." And then he started laughing. Well, I told the girls to get out. I had one other problem. The other problem I had was in the it was a station wagon, a little Toyota station wagon. And in the back, there's a wheel well there. I had $15,000 in African currency for our orphanage. And I'm thinking, Lord, it's my car I'm losing, but it's your money you're losing. And so, I said, you got to give me an idea here. And so then I finally said to him, I said, "Listen," I said, would it be okay if we got out our suitcases? We had 2 bags in the back, and I said, "Because we'll need those." Okay, get your suitcases. And then, so I went around quickly to the back, and I unzipped the girl's suitcase, and I grabbed it, and I threw it out. And when I threw it out, things went everywhere. And later the girl said, "Dad, you had to use our suitcase." And I said, "Well, yours was more interesting than mine." And I said, "So I'm trying to accomplish something here." And as soon as I threw it out, I knew they would be looking to see what was coming out of that suitcase. And I reached into the wheel well, pulled the money out, unzipped the other suitcase, slid it in, and then zipped it up. And they never said anything, so I knew they didn't see. And then he had the keys. I said, "All right, enjoy your ride." And just about that time, this car pulls up behind us. This guy gets out, and he's civilian dressed, and he says, "What's going on?" I said, well, they're taking my car. And he said, I said to him, I said, who are you? He said, never mind. I said, no. I said, who are you? He said, never mind. And then he told him, he said, leave them alone, give them the car back, let them go. And that was the end of it. You know, I don't know who he was. I know the Lord sent him. But you know, God takes care of us. And there are stories after stories after stories of the Lord working in the ministry. We Denise and I, our ministry entails when we were finally taken out of Ivory Coast as a result of the third coup, we had to be evacuated out. Our military had to come in and get us. And anyway, when that happened, Ivory Coast was shut down for a while. So IGM asked me if I would be willing to oversee all 5 of our West African countries. They said, since you speak French, and most of those are French-speaking countries, would you be willing to oversee those ministries? And I said yes. And we did that for a number of years. And then a few years back, probably about 4 years back or so, they came to me, IGM came to me and said, would you be willing to become the director of our orphan ministries? Now, Janelle, our youngest daughter, was an orphan. And we adopted her. We got her when she was 9 months old. And that's a fantastic story, how the Lord worked through all that, but I won't keep you with that. And anyway, so we had felt like God was calling us to build an orphanage for these children that had no voice. You see, we were working with the Baule people. Baule means the child has died tribe. And they have a story for that. But their belief is if a girl doesn't go through what they call the washing ritual, and she has a child, she becomes a curse. And her child is cursed. And what they do is they will either starve that child when it's first born, they'll starve it to death, or they'll kill it, and if the mother refuses, then oftentimes they'll poison her as well, or excommunicate her from the village. Well, they can't survive because the village is their family situation. And so we're having a lot of these children, you know, people would give them up. I had one, I was headed back from the missionary school where our children went to school while we were there. It's the same school I went to when I was a kid in Ivory Coast. It was called Ivory Coast Academy. And I was on my way back into town one day, and one of my pastors came running out and stopped me in the middle of the road and stopped me. And I looked at him, I said, you can't do that. He says, do what? I said, you can't. I'm traveling 55 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you show up out of nowhere and stop in the middle of the road and do this. I said, I could just run you over. I said, if I didn't like you, I would have. And he had a 7-day-old baby in his hands. And he says, here, you need to take him. I said, you can't do that either. I said, you can't just give me a baby and tell me to take him. He said, well, this baby's been cursed. It's going to die. They've starved it to death. And its only hope. I said, oh, Lord, what are you doing? I said, how am I going to explain this to my wife? I show up with a 7-day-old baby. I said, all right, let's strap him in. And I drove around town for 2 hours trying to figure out what I'm going to do here. And I didn't have any choices, and I finally said, you know what, I just got to bite the bullet, go home, and try to figure this thing out. So I took him home, and I showed him to Denise. And Denise says, what haven't you told me, Jim? I said, Denise, don't even go there. I said, I told you everything I can tell you. I said, I can go get Emmanuel to come. No, she says, I'm teasing, I know. I said, we need to find a home for him. And she looked at me and she says, well, we've already found a home for him. I said, no, Denise. I said, at that time we were adopting Janelle when we were going through all those paperwork. And I thought, we add another one to that, it could create some problems. And I said, no, I said, God has a special place for this little guy. And my wife looked at me and says, okay, yeah, he does. And she didn't say anything else about it. Well, we had him going on 10 days. And I'm thinking, Lord, it's too late now. You can't take him out of this home. You keep waiting. And Denise came to me about 2 or 3 days later, and she says, we need to give him a name. I said, no, we don't need to name him. She said, yeah, we need to give him a name. I said, okay, let's call him Boy. Let's just call him Boy. She says, you can't call him Boy. I said, do you know what happens when you apply the name? She said, it doesn't matter what you think. She says, he needs a name, and God gave me a name. I said, well, what's the name? She said, Samuel. I said, all right, we'll call him Samuel. We had Samuel for about 10 days, and one more I woke up, and the Lord brought a name to my memory, and we had a missionary family out there that he was a doctor, missionary doctor, worked at the Baptist hospital up in Farrakay, and they had a little boy named Nicholas. He's 3 years old. He was found in the cornfield outside the hospital, and Dr. Herring and his wife could not have children, so they adopted him. I said, that's it. I said, Nicholas needs a baby brother. So anyway, I picked up the phone. I called up there to talk to the doctor. And one of the missionary nurses, she says, well, the doctor's not in right now. And I said, okay. I said, just have him call Jim when he gets in. And she says, well, Jim, what do you want? And I said, well, isn't there such a thing as patient confidentiality? And she says, no, this is Africa. We don't care about any confidentiality. And I said, all right, I'll tell you. And I explained the story to her. And the phone dropped on the other end. I thought, well, what did I say? And she picked up the phone and she was sobbing. And I said, what's going on? She said, do you know where his wife is? I said, no. I said, tell you the truth, I have a hard enough time keeping track of my wife, my own wife. I'm sure not going to worry about his wife. And he says, his wife is down in the capital city looking for a newborn baby brother for Nicholas. I thought, wow, does God work? Now I had to go home and tell Denise. And she looked at me and she said, you just can't leave it alone, could you, Jim? And I said, no. I said, I told you God had a special place. She said to me, she says, if this is what the Lord wants, then they'll know what his name is. I said, are you kidding me? I said, Denise, have you seen the book of names today? I said, and what's even more confusing is boys have girls' names now and girls have boys' names. I said, how in the world are they going to know what his name is? She says, well, God doesn't make any mistakes. I said, no, and he sure did a pretty good job on this. She said, don't know what his name is. Boy, I never prayed so hard in a day, that next day. Lord, put big billboards up. Think Samuel. Think Samuel. So they showed up, and we were friends of theirs, so we knew them. And anyway, through our course of our conversation, my wife looks at him and says, have you picked a name for your son yet? And the mother and the wife looked at Denise and said, yes, I have. And Denise says, it's Samuel, isn't it? And her mouth dropped wide open and she said, how did you know that? I thought, wow. And so, so we were in the process of building an orphanage to help these children like this. And 4 years ago, the director of our mission asked me if I'd take over FMI, Faith Ministries International. I revamped the whole program. We have over 1,000 orphans and orphanages in 12 countries. Revamped the whole program, rewrote all the policies, everything, so that things would run smoothly. Had that all running well and everything. A year and a half ago, our director came to me and says, Jim, there's another family that would like to take that ministry over. Would you be willing to relinquish it? I said, Gary, after I've done all the hard work and now I can enjoy this, you want it back. I said, are you sure this is who should be running it? And he said, absolutely. I said, all right. I said, Denise and I will go back to focusing just on Ivory Coast in our ministries there, and also traveling with national pastors. Now, Ivory Coast, we have been continuing our ministry there, but there's so much more need that was needed. In the last year and a half, we have started 7 churches. We've taken on 4 new pastors. We just, through the ministry of our churches and our supporters, we just built a new church for one of our young ministries. They're already running close to 150. And we're seeing the Lord work in amazing ways in Ivory Coast. And so Denise and I prayed about it, and I said, Denise, I said, really? This would be a relief. But I told Gary, I says, Gary, when I turn this over, I said, don't come back later and say, will you please take it back? Because I said, when I shut the door, that door is shut. He said, all right, no problem. A year ago, Gary came to me and said, we had to let the couple go because it just wasn't working out. The situation wasn't working out. Nothing was working out. Would you please be willing to take it back? And I found out in that year that they had that ministry, they completely dismantled that whole ministry. Left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. Right hand didn't know. Kids were being not supported. I mean, all kinds of things going on. And so, anyway, we have taken back over that. We've got it straightened back out. It's starting to run back on smooth tracks. And so one of the responsibilities, we've got 250 orphans that still need support, $35 a month. And so we're in the process of trying to help raise for their ministries as well. And for those little ones as well. And yet that ministry is almost like a revolving wheel, because as soon as you get those kids supported, you got a group more that have been taken on because there's so many needs. And 100% of the funds that come in go straight to helping those children. And it's exciting. It's exciting to see what God is doing. I had one of the kids write me. He's in his 20s now. And he wrote me, oftentimes you don't hear back after the orphan children grow up. You don't hear anything back. One day we will. When we're all together in heaven, we'll get to see the results of the fruit that have gone into those labors. But I had one that wrote me, and he said, Pastor Arnold, he said, you don't know who I am, but I am one of the orphans that you helped find support for. And he says, God used the orphan ministry to save my life, to teach me the ways of Christ, which ultimately ended up making my decision for Christ. And he says, today I'm a pastor. And I just wanted you to know that. And I thought, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And so I ask that you continue to be praying for our ministries. Our Bible school in Ivory Coast continues to do well. We graduate about 20 students a year. It's a 4-year program. And over the last 19 years, we have graduated over 450 pastors. And with those 450 pastors, they have started over 200 churches in Ivory Coast. Just through that one little ministry, that Bible school. So God is at work. And I encourage you to be praying for our pastors. You know, this COVID thing hasn't been easy for them. He said the hardest thing is getting food because the villagers weren't allowed into the city. The city people weren't allowed outside the city back to the villagers. He says all our food come from the villagers. We can't afford to pay the prices for the city food. We buy it from the villagers. And he says, then what do we do? And so they've been dealing with that whole situation. He said they finally started letting them hold church services. He says, we do what you do. We space them all out, everything. And we've had the police come in twice in the last month and shut our services down. And I said, well, why did they shut their service down? He says, because we're one of the larger churches and they just don't want us to meet. And he says that creates another problem. And I said, well, what's the other problem? He says, then it puts fear in the people for wanting to come back to church. And so there's a lot going on there. And I just encourage you to be praying for them. Tonight, I know my time is short. We've only got a few minutes, so I will shorten this thing up. But you know, in the day we live in, I think we're a country of excuses. We have excuses for everything, don't we? I have more fun with my grandkids than anything. Their ages 9 to 16. And I sit there and I listen to them. And I listen. I mean, they're over at our house all the time. If Bobo's home, they want to come. And Mom and Denise says, well, what about me? What am I, chopped liver? I said, you must be, because I said, they want to see Bobo. And she started laughing. But anyway, I'll sit there and they don't think I'm listening, but I'm sitting in there in another room doing something. They're out on the couch and they're listening. I caught the two, our grandson Aiden, the one we're raising, he's 9, and Addie is our granddaughter. She's our daughter Julie. They live behind us. And Addie and Aiden are like this. You can't separate those two. They're just the best of buddies. And they're sitting on a couch, and I was sitting in the back room doing something. And I heard them talking, and Aiden says to Addie, she says, Addie, who do you like better? Do you like your mom better, or do you like Bobo? And I thought, this is getting interesting. And so they're sitting out there and they're batting this thing around, and Addie says, oh, I like Bobo a whole lot better. And Aiden says, why? She says, because my mom can be really mean. She makes us do some chores, and she can make us do things. And she says, but Bobo, he's just so nice. He doesn't make us do anything. I'm thinking, yeah, because I already raised my kids. Now it's my time to have fun. And Aiden says, yeah, I like Bobo so much better too. But anyway, so they're in there discussing these things. But we have come to a point where we can excuse just our way about anything. You know, you even see what's going on in our country today, and all the excuses for why things are happening and what's happening and why it should and shouldn't and all this. But you know, sadly, in our churches today, God's people have excuses for a lot of reasons why they can't do and won't do what they should be doing. Do we not? You know, we have reasons why we can't serve. We have reasons why we just can't give. We have excuses for why we can't support missions. We have excuses for why we can't help out with ushering. Whatever the case may be, whatever the need may be, we always have excuses. We can't make it there. We can't do this. I'm reminded of Peter. Peter was in Ivory Coast. He was one of our Christians. And Peter had leprosy. His fingers were gone, his ears were gone, his nose was gone. I mean, he looked a mess. And he showed up one night at our home, and it was about 4 a.m. And I heard this door go, 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 go. And I said to my wife, I woke her up, I said, someone's knocking at the door. And she said, well, Jim, go see who it is. I said, well, isn't that your job? You're the hostess. She said, you're the man of the house. Go see who it is. It could be really important. I said, all right, I'll go see. I went out there. I said, hello, hello, who's there? Who's there? There was no answer. I waited 5 minutes. So I went back to bed, and Denise said, well, who was it? I said, it wasn't anybody. There wasn't anybody there. She says, well, the next time it happens, she says, answer, here am I, Lord. Your servant heareth. And then see what happens. I said, Denise, go to bed. I said, so it wasn't about 5 minutes later, I heard the same thing. And I said, Denise, I said, now it's your turn. She said, you're the one hearing it. She said, go see who it is. So I went out there. I flipped on all the spotlights this time. I lit up the yard. Who's there? This fellow steps out from behind a tree. He says, it's me. It's me. I said, who's me? And he says, it's me. Well, I figured that was his name then, because, he wasn't. And he stepped out, and I could see he had leprosy and that he was in a little bit of tough shape. And I said to him, I said, what can I help you with? And he says, I need you to teach me how to read. I said, at 4 a.m? I says, do you know what time it is? He says, oh, white man. He says, the first rooster crowed a long time ago. I said, well, that's good, but the white man doesn't get up till the last rooster crows. And I said, I'm not getting up till 6. I said, teach you how to read? I said, listen. And we had a little shed out back that had bed and everything. I said, you go sleep it off. And I said, I'll talk to you at 6 a.m. Okay, no problem. 6 a.m, I got up, and he says to me, he says, I need you to teach me how to read. I said, for what? He said, because I need to take the word of God to my people. I said, really? He said, really? And I said, why don't we take the word of God to your people for you? He said, oh, that's good. But he said, put your hand out. Well, I put my hand out. He put his out. He said, you see the difference? He said, my people aren't going to listen to you because you've never walked in the shoes we're walking in. He said, won't you please teach me how to read? Well, have you ever tried to teach someone how to read that's never had a day of education in their life? The first 3 weeks didn't go too well. And we finally came to the realization that we're not going to teach him anything, that it's the Lord that's going to have to teach them, and that our attitudes need to change. He didn't have a name, and I said to him, I can't just keep calling you me. I said, we're going to call you Peter. Oh, he got excited. He was so excited. I thought about that. I wondered, how many of us were that excited when we were first named? No, we were too busy getting our bottoms slapped to make sure that we were alive, right? But he was excited about his name. And so anyway, we worked with him for about 3 months. And what was interesting is he could begin to read, and he could read the Word of God. Now, he wasn't going to win any speed reading drills, but he could read it. And what was even more interesting to me is God gave him understanding. He didn't have to go to Bible school to learn it and study it. God gave him immediate understanding. And he said to me, he said, you know, if you give me a Bible, I'm going to go back to my people. And I said, well, you know, we need to put you in a hospital. We can get your leprosy, all that, put in remission, and maybe give you another 10, 15 years. Well, he said, I don't have time for that. He said, my people don't have time for that. If ever there was a man that had an excuse of why he couldn't serve the Lord, it would have been Peter. I mean, just to look at him. And you know, we didn't hear anything from Peter for 3 months. And 3 months later, we were in a village one afternoon holding a service in a thatched roof, hut, church, a little small church. And in the middle of the service, in walked two men with a stretcher. And you know who was on that stretcher? Was Peter. I never seen anybody deteriorate so much in 3 months. And he had that smile on his face, and he could hardly talk. All he could do was whisper. And we leaned down and he whispered. He says, I did it. And he says, my people listened. Shortly after Peter went on to be with the Lord, we took his body out to his village for his funeral. You know what we found out at his funeral? We found out that in those 3 months he had led over 150 of his people to Jesus. They stood up and gave testimony. You see, folks, no excuses. He had no excuses. And tonight, just very quickly, 5 reasons not to go to church. You say, well, that's different. We're told to go to church. Well, I'm giving you 5 reasons why not to go to church, and none of them have to do with COVID. Okay? 5 reasons why not to go to church. Just listen, I'm going to go through these real quick. I promise you. What time is it? My girls say, Dad, if you can't say it in 20 minutes, just don't say it at all. Anyway, we'll try to knock it out in 10 minutes. How about that, okay? I'd encourage you. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 47. Just listen. It says, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. 5 reasons why not to go to church. Number 1, don't do it because you have to, but rather do it because you get to. Now, I don't know what else you can say to that makes it more clear than shutting down church for 3 months. That should pretty well make it pretty clear to us, doesn't it? You get to the point where you want to go. You're excited about going. Don't do it because you have to, but do it because you get to. Far too often we go to church because we feel obligated. We really don't have the joy. We really don't have the excitement in it. We're here because it's the right thing to do. Oftentimes, we're not here because we get to. But we're here because that's the right thing to do. You know, they say there's a saying that people go to church Sunday morning because it's the right thing to do. People go to church Sunday night because they love the pastor. People go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night because they love the Lord. Now, you take that for whatever, but that's what they say. Secondly, don't go to church to meet someone else's expectations, but do it out of obedience to God. Wow. You know, I look at that in Romans chapter 16, verses 17 and 18. It says, now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which ye have learned, and avoid them. For they that are such serve not our Lord Jesus Christ, but their own belly, and by good words and fair speeches deceive the hearts of the simple. Don't go to church to meet someone else's expectations. You know, don't go to church because you feel like you're going to disappoint the pastor. Don't go to church because you feel like you're going to disappoint your spouse your children, your friends. But we go because of our love for the Lord. That's why we go to church. You go because of your love for the Lord. Not because you're afraid of disappointing somebody. We had a lady in Ivory Coast. Her name was Lady Elizabeth. She was one of the sweetest ladies you would ever meet. She was up in her years. She loved the Lord. She had nothing. Her room was just a cement walls, cement floor, and a door. That was it. She had a little thin mat that laid on the floor, and she had her clothes just stacked up in a little pile in the corner. She didn't have food. We would give her food, bags of rice to help her through, but she loved the Lord. I can remember when we were kids, I had two brothers, and my parents said we were the three amigos, and they said we were bad news when we had ideas. And one day my dad caught us making slingshots. And he stopped us and he says, "Boys, what you doing?" We said, "Well, we're making slingshots. We're going hunting." And he says, "Do you know what the rule is about slingshots, right?" We said, "Oh yeah, Dad, we've learned. We can't shoot at people, and we can't shoot at houses, and we can't shoot at the cars." We didn't do that. But that was his rules. Because sometimes our rocks, when we shot them, fell some places maybe they shouldn't have. But it wasn't like we were aiming at people or stuff. But what we did is we would play tag with our slingshots. And we had these little things that grew on these trees, and they were soft. They were almost like a paintball, and when they hit you, they'd splat. And they'd leave a little welt. And that's us three boys would play tag with each other doing that until I shot my little brother right in the eye, and then that ended that. So that's where we got the slingshot reprimand. But anyway, so we made these slingshots. We decided we'd go out and test them out. And you know, in Africa, they let their they let their animals run everywhere. Their chickens, their goats, their sheep, their everything. Our yard was full of chickens. They weren't ours. And my little brother looked at us. He says, "You see that big rooster there?" He says, "Well, let's take some turns shooting at it, and whoever hits it gets so many points." So we said, "All right, pick up 5 stones." I don't know why we picked 5. Maybe it's because we had heard the David and Goliath story so much. But we picked up 5 stones, and we drew a line. And we told the little brother, we said, "It's your idea. You go first." He says, "Well, get them moving a little bit," because he said, "We can't just shoot them there like that. They got to be moving." I said, "Okay." Well, we hadn't hit anything with our slingshots. We couldn't hit anything. We put up even big cardboard boxes, and we could hardly hit those. And he's sitting there aiming at this big white rooster going across the yard like he really thinks he knows what he's doing. And he lets that stone go, and if it doesn't hit that rooster square in the head. And that thing started flopping around, feathers going everywhere. It was making an awful noise. And we ran up to the, "Shh, it's going to be okay. Shh, you're just stunned. You're going to live." And we took off. About an hour later, we sent Rick back out and said, "Go see if it's gone." He come back, he says, "It's gone. He's okay." I said, "Oh, shoo." I said, "We better not do that anymore." It wasn't long after that, my dad caught up with us. He said, "Boys," he says, "did anything happen today that I should know about?" What kind of question is that? I mean, that's a stupid question. First of all, it tells us you know something. Secondly, we're not going to tell you we know something, that something happened, and then if you didn't know that, then whatever you know, this is just going to put us in double jeopardy. And so we said, "No, Dad, nothing happened today you should know about." He said, "Well, I'm going to make it easy for you." We said, "Okay, we like that." He says, "Did anything happen today with any chickens that I should know about?" We both pointed to Rick. We said it was his idea. We said he shot that chicken. We tried to tell him this is not a good idea. He did it anyway. Well, then we get the lecture. You're the older ones. You know better. You're the more responsible ones. Oh, yada, yada. You know, you hear all that. Well, we found out that chicken was Lady Elizabeth's. And we had to go up and apologize to her. And we had to use all of our allowance that we had made to buy her a rooster. But Lady Elizabeth loved the Lord with all her heart. When those church doors were open, she was there. That offering plate would go by. She didn't have money to put in it. You know what she did? She'd take her rice, bag it up in a baggie, tie it up. And when the offering plate came by, she'd put her rice in and say, "Thank you, Lord." I caught her one day. She had our pastor, our national pastor, cornered in the back of the church after the service, telling him how he could be saved. I mean, she was giving him the what for. And when she was all done, I walked up to her and I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "He's your pastor. He is saved." And she looked at me and she smiled. She says, "Oh, little one." Back then I was a little one. She says, "Don't ever take it for granted that somebody's saved just because of the position they're in." You see, she went to church because of her love for God. Thirdly, don't do it to be seen of men, but do it so He will be seen. So He will be seen. Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." You know, the culture, society we live in today is, let's give everybody a trophy. You know, that's really what we live in. Everybody deserves a trophy. We went and watched one of Aiden's soccer games a couple years ago. When I got home, I told my wife, I said, have you seen anything so boring in all your life? I said, he's sitting back there twiddling his hands and then twirling around circles. The ball's being played. He has no clue. I said, this is embarrassing. She said to me, she says, "Jim, you were the All-American soccer player. Why don't you teach him?" I said, "Can you really teach that?" I mean, he didn't even want to be out there. But you know, at the end of the season, he got a trophy with a whole bunch of them. Win, lose, they matter. I'm competitive. But you know, our society today is give everybody a trophy. Let's recognize everybody. It's the look at me mentality. Look at who I am. Look at what I'm about. We don't go to church to be seen of men. But the reason we go to church is so He will be seen. Your missionaries serving the Lord all across the world, they're not serving out there for recognition, for glory, and for praise. And many of them are serving in dangerous areas of the world. But they're serving so that He will be seen. Fourthly, don't do it to earn the grace of God, but do it to experience the grace of God. Don't do it to earn the grace of God, but do it to experience the grace of God. Matthew 5:46 says, "For if we love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same?" You know, we go to church to experience His love, His grace. And lastly, don't do it because of your love for others, but because of your love for Him. 5 reasons why not to go to church. Where do we find ourselves in all of that? You know, one day we all will stand before our Creator. And the question is, what will we have to say? What will we have to say? I believe our time is short. I really do. And I believe that we need to get busy for His kingdom. in these days that we have left. Denise shared with me this afternoon, she says, please tell the church thank you so much for praying for her. And we thank you for your prayers and your faithful support. I mean, this church has been supporting us probably 25 years, somewhere in there. And you continue to remain faithful. And we appreciate that. We thank the Lord for your pastor, for his family. And I trust that this weekend has been a good weekend for him and them. They need to get away. And he says, you know, it's our last time before school starts. I said, school starts? I said, schools have started in Georgia back on the 12th. He says, well, that's Georgia. But we'll continue to be praying for each of you, and we'll continue to be praying for your pastor as he continues to serve with you as you reach this area for Christ.